like me, you know that this is an insane time, and things just keep, we just keep adding to the insane pile. Maybe like once a week, every time you open your phone, there's just something new happening, and I hate it. So I'm coming to you with a bunch of foreign movies and TV shows that I have been watching this month and through the past months a little, that I have absolutely loved and cannot get enough of. If you are really caught up into a lot of Japanese or Korean or Spanish media, you may probably already know some of these, but I'm really making this video for people who want to branch out and who aren't really used to watching things with, subtitles or in different languages or experiencing different cultures. I was actually supposed to be experiencing different cultures. I was supposed to have a trip to Japan that obviously, if there's anything that this time really did for me, it was to help me kind of branch out and expand my horizons in things that I like to watch, because eventually you get tired of your Netflix homepage. So without further ado, I'm going to start with the TV shows. The first show that I wanted to talk about is Love Alarm. Love Alarm is a Korean drama released in 2019 about an app that alerts you when someone within a 10-meter radius is in love with you. The app monitors your heart rate, among other things, which obviously causes a lot of issues for the high school protagonist that we'll be following throughout the show. A lot of you may be thinking whoever made this didn't think this through entirely. And yeah, that's pretty much what the show is essentially about. The story follows Kim Jojo, a high school student, and her love triangle with her childhood friend and his friend, who is essentially extremely more popular than he is. He's a model, he is an actor, and overall, in many superficial ways, better than the childhood friend. The story doesn't just follow them, but eventually follows what happens after the app is released and how it affects the society that they live in. It shows how even an app that is just widely used by high school students can transform and change the entire world as we know it in terms of social cues, basic interactions with each other, and the way that we perceive each other and love as a whole. Not having a love alarm on at all times just becomes outlandish. Traditional dating kind of goes out the window. People's need to be loved becomes way more apparent now that it can just be shown on your sleeve at any time whatsoever. As the story progresses, you can see how detrimental this can be to the characters when their privacy and their inner feelings are just shown out to the world all the time, every single day, and how it affects the society that they live in. The next show is Money Heist. Money Heist is a Spanish TV show that was released in 2017 and recently was picked up by Netflix for more seasons and distributed to the US and around the world. If you're like me, the title didn't necessarily catch you in the beginning. It's just Money Heist. There's a heist, they get the money. I mean, it kind of is what it is. I'm never really a fan of shows like that. I felt like they were very surface, and after a while they didn't really interest me. Many crime shows really don't delve into the characters, and they really just pay more attention to the high stakes action that was going on, and I assumed that Money Heist was going to be this way, and that was a pretty bad assumption. The show is mainly about the heisters and how they cope with the high stakes situation that they are currently in, and it delves into the relationships that they eventually do make before and during the heist while it's happening, for better or for worse. The characters are really, really entertaining, and they hold so much depth to them. You'll eventually feel like you personally know these people because you've been in such close quarters with them as they have been with each other. I'm obviously late to the show because it came out 3 years ago at this point. However, if you've heard of it and you've had some hesitations toward it, I would highly, highly recommend this show. I was really, really surprised by how much I liked the show and how invested I was, especially because it's really not necessarily my style, but yeah, overall, amazing show. Next is Kingdom. Kingdom is a Korean show about what would happen if a zombie apocalypse hit ancient Korea sometime after the Japanese invasion. The first season depicts the story of the Crown Prince Lee Chang and his investigation into a political conspiracy and a plague that has completely swept all of Korea. He's finding that a lot of the political corruption and the lies that the government are trying to cover up and the plague itself are completely intersecting, and he's trying to figure out what are the connections between the two. I really love this show. The zombies are so fast and they're so scary, and honestly I have no idea how I would have handled living in those kinds of situations. I know sometimes when you see like the slow Walking Dead kind of zombies, you think that like that's nothing. Like I could have definitely dealt with that. I have no clue how they're doing this in Kingdom. On top of it, because it is set in such an older time, there's no guns, there's no explosives, there's not really what we know about like military stuff, you know. It's so much harder, and it's really interesting to see how they choose to handle and how they fix these situations with the limited resources that they do have. The characters are really interesting. They all have kind of that something special that really makes you root for them and really hope that they don't die. Overall, I just think it's a really great show with a very interesting concept. On top of that, you really get to learn about the everyday lives and the culture happening in ancient Korea. Is it ancient? In older Korea. I feel like every episode I'm learning something new about kind of the agricultural system or the architecture. Just in the costume design alone, you learn a lot about the culture and you have more of an appreciation for the show because of it. Everything just seems so much more real and plausible, even though a zombie apocalypse isn't plausible-ish, but it really does add to the story. So I want to be talking about movies that I watched during this time that are just... The first movie that I want to talk about is A Silent Voice. A Silent Voice has become one of my favorite movies of all time. I can watch this movie... Well, I can't watch this movie all the time. It's a lot. It's a lot emotionally, but I guarantee you it is all worth it. A Silent Voice is the story of a young boy who has a lot of issues that sets his sight on bullying the new deaf girl that has entered his class. He sees bullying her as a way to get his own anger out and to grow his popularity and connect more with his peers, which in the beginning it does end up working. However, in the long run, it really does not work out too well for him. This is a story about love, depression, anxiety, ableism, suicide. So if these things are a lot for you, which it's a lot, I completely understand, so this is like a little trigger warning for the beginning. This movie is animated so beautifully, and they really took time and care into the way that they decided to portray things like anxiety and how that feels to the person experiencing it. You get to kind of enter his mind and see exactly what he is seeing, and some of it is metaphorical, but honestly it really does feel physical. It feels like he's actually seeing these things and actually hearing these things, which when you have anxiety and depression, it does feel that way. Even though you know it's not real, everything that they kind of show you really will hit home. They really took extreme care and went into all the details on just the way that they animate hands, facial expressions, small body movements, just looks from side to side. Those kinds of things without any words will explain to you how they are feeling in that moment, and it's just mesmerizing to watch. Overall, it's just a really amazing movie. I cannot recommend it enough. Next up is The Platform. Platform is a lot. The story follows a man who we don't know, who is in an area that we also don't know about. Love it. Starts off with a lot of confusion. What we know as the Watcher is that he has another cellmate and there are different levels to the area that he is on. You eventually learn that they can only spend a month in that area and then they are switched to a different floor, and no one knows which floor that is. You keep your partner, but the change is completely random. This concept really doesn't seem too bad until you learn that there is a platform of food that is completely filled with meals and like just incredible dishes created by amazing people, and it goes down through the levels every single day. So if you're at the bottom level and the food is all gone, yikes. The movie is essentially a commentary on classism, greed, human nature, and how we as people can try to combat and change the injustices that we see around us. The movie is pretty hardcore, so if you're squeamish about things like gore and just overall just sometimes it's just gross, like sometimes it's just really unsettling, but overall it's still an amazing experience, and it really does have a lot to say about the world that we live in, even though it leaves a pretty interesting taste in your mouth, to say the least. I still would highly recommend it. The last movie that I wanted to talk about, I know I said this about a silent voice, but it really did become another one of my top favorite movies of all time. Portrait of a Lady on Fire. The French really know romance, and they know it a little too well because god damn. This movie is about a painter who was called into a semi-remote town to pretend to be the walking partner of this seemingly unpaintable woman. She apparently turns away every single painter that has ever tried to sit down and try to make a portrait of her. So the mother of the woman decided to get someone to pretend to be her walking partner so that she can memorize her face and then paint it on a canvas without her ever even knowing. I'm pretty hesitant to call this movie slow because it's not really slow. At times it can get very quiet, but if you're paying attention to their movements and if you're really watching the movie, it's not slow at all. The film tends to really go by just their facial expressions, tiny movements, different ways that they kind of look across the room to each other. That in of itself is what makes the movie so kind of fast-paced. There's a lot of anticipation. There's a lot of will they, won't they, is she interested? I don't really know if she's interested. Is she interested? There's so much just like suspense to see what will happen in the next scene. It just kind of lingers in the air, and honestly it almost becomes a little like eerie. Like if they do get together, there might be something wrong. It might end wrong. We don't really know. Whatever's going to happen between them is a complete mystery. Because this movie is so reliant on body language and physical cues, the actors are amazing. The acting is so good. I don't know how they're not just like documenting real people, because there's no way that I can remember to do all those tiny, minute little things that make them seem so in love, or at least make you feel like they're in love. We don't know if they're in love. I feel like in a lot of American movies and like just American romance in general, we're kind of taught that love has to be this grand, amazing, I proposed to you at Disney World, bought you 1 billion flowers kind of a thing. But in reality, it's really not. Love is the little things. It's the way that you look at each other across the room. It's your inside jokes. It's, you know, the tiny little handholds. It's stuff like that. It's the thing that only the two of you know that no one else does. It's what really makes love such an intimate experience, and really makes this movie such an intimate experience. Watching it, you really feel like you're almost watching something you shouldn't. Like you're just kind of peeping in to their room at night or something. I feel almost like I'm violating their privacy. That's how intimate this movie is. Overall, I love the movie. I adored the movie. 10 out of 10. I hope that you guys really like my recommendations, and I really, really recommend that you guys go and check these out. I'm pretty sure everything that I've mentioned is on some sort of streaming platform, whether it be Netflix. I think Portrait is on Hulu. I just personally feel like there is so much good media and good movies and content out there that is outside of the US that just offers you an entirely new perspective on life, because we all live different lives, we all experience different cultures, so obviously our art and the things that we make will be different, and really in the best ways possible. I'm probably going to make more of these, maybe like once a month, because I feel like now that I'm constantly looking for things that are just around the world. If you have any recommendations for me, please leave them in the comments. I absolutely will watch them. I'll take anything that you give me. I literally have nowhere else to go at the moment. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys later.